We've got till 12 o'clock. I want to welcome those that are joining us to this session. This session, of course, continues yesterday's theme of the virus crisis. And certainly we will remember this 100-year revisit and what was the, originally the Spanish, although we now know the American flu as its original genesis, but I'll leave that to historians to debate. And here we are, we will remember this in another 100 years' time. It's the year 2020. You are part of history. I don't know if you've reflected on that. You might like to do so. So the rules are that the speakers have been given sort of 15 minutes, but we've only got 4 speakers in this session. So we're going to go for 15 minutes, maybe a couple of minutes longer and no longer. And then I'll invite you to ask your questions of each speaker at the end of each of their talk. And that's a good proximity. And then we will finish up by 12 o'clock. All right, Michael, I'm going to invite you to unmute. And I'm going to invite you to share your screen. In doing so, can I introduce Michael, who's giving us the topic of crisis or an opportunity, challenges to e-learning protocols development and implementation. So very timely. Michael, you're at founder and managing director of Barron Consulting, a boutique Melbourne-based consulting firm. And yeah, sorry about being in Melbourne, but 4.5 million people can't be wrong. Greatly diluted, not wrong. But you also lecture MBA and MIS students at some of the leading Australian universities. So welcome, and just hit that presenter's view down the bottom there, at the bottom of your PowerPoint, just to get the presenter views. Yeah, right down the bottom, just next one down.
Interesting, I haven't been using this function before.
Yeah, well.
Normal, slide sorter, reading view.
Next one. Next one along. That's it. Just click on that one, and away you go.
Okay. Yep. May I start?
Yes, indeed. Please.
Yep. Thank you, Michael. And I'm also very, very sorry to be in Victoria, but looks like, as our lovely Premier pointed out, all Victorians were in it together. And I've been with the CQU before for about 15 years at Melbourne campus. And while I was at Melbourne campus, on many occasions I've been asked to visit the Rocky campus. And at the time I somehow didn't have an opportunity. And now this is my first time visiting the campus, even though it's happening in the virtual mode, but I'm quite excited. Won't be able to see the rules jumping around the campus, because apparently this is what's happening. That's supposed to be a main attraction. And today I'm going to share my experiences, both positive and not so positive, in e-learning implementation beyond the pandemics, because I've been involved in e-learning for a while, and I started long before the pandemics. And of course, I used to think that there are certain challenges that we can accommodate for, and if we do so, we're fine. But as we're all discovering now, there is something called unknown unknowns, and they really impact our work. So this is what I'll talk about today. So what I've been doing is translating traditional learning protocols, translating courses into the online mode. And that included not just the subject content, but also assessment tasks, also admin processes, also the student support services. So the idea was that whatever processes you have in the face-to-face environment, as e-learning protocol development specialists, we were supposed to enable in the online mode. So this is how it was before the pandemics. So in my work, I always follow 3 principles. And the principles have been as follows. First of all, when I'm translating traditional processes into the e-learning ones, I need to make sure that service delivery is not compromised, and whatever the customers, and in this sense, students and employees, everybody are the customers, so they don't feel disadvantaged just because they're being online as opposed to face-to-face mode. The second principle is easy access, easy to deliver, user-friendly. The third principle is reliable, no breakdowns throughout, and of course, technical support available. And the best part was that before starting any course development, before starting development of any of the e-learning protocols, it was up to me and the client to decide how long it's going to take, what is to be included, what are the resources required, what are the human resources required, what are the potential challenges. And we used to spend a few weeks just talking this over, even before we get to the to the formal contracts, just discussing what it's going to be like. This is the traditional development process. And then, of course, one fine, or maybe not so fine day, the brave new world came. And just to give you some of the perspective that we had here in Victoria. So Monday morning, I'm having a lecture. On my way to the lecture, I check my email, and my email informs me that unfortunately, due to COVID-19, this is going to be our last week teaching face-to-face. From next week onwards, we're all moving online. My lecture is for 2 hours. My lecture gets over. I check my email once again. I have a new email sitting there which tells me, sorry, the office is closed from tomorrow. No more classes for the rest of the week. Tomorrow the classes are online. In another 20 minutes, another email comes. University takes a couple of minutes. Time out, mid-semester break, moves forward. No classes for 2 weeks. We have to get ready. Another 30 minutes later, an email comes from my client. This is not a place where I teach. This is a place where I provide e-learning development and support. Michael, what do we do? And usually when they email me, they start by telling me that they hope I have a nice day, tell me a little bit about their day, and then slowly get to business. This time, nothing but one line. What do we do? So this is more or less the situation that we were in Victoria. And my clients, they're not universities. They're TAFE colleges, which means courses that they teach, they're not that easy to translate online because some of the assessment tasks, they have to be by demonstration. There are a lot of materials that are not that easy to place into the virtual environment. So this is what my challenge was. Traditionally, I was collecting the key client requirements, confirming the requirements, developing and confirming protocol outlines, designing the protocols, testing, implementation. And the time varied. The time frame for those projects varied by negotiation. So we were able to take as long as required. If I feel that I'm not able to do a good job in less than, for instance, 1 month, I would inform my client and the time would be provided. And this is the brave new world in red on the right. Everything to be delivered online. Not the programs that we think are suitable for online, but every single course to be delivered online, of course. 1 to 2 weeks to complete the transition from classroom-based to e-learning. Complete transition. All assessments to be available online because there's no choice. And then, of course, suddenly, I've been thrown into deep waters with hands-on courses such as, for example, cookery and building certificates. And part of the question was, which modules can we teach online? Because at the time, nobody was clear how long the lockdown is for. The nightmare that was yet to come, we could not understand it fully. So we were not sure whether it's 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 7 weeks. And in any case, we had to bring some modules forward so we can deliver them in the meantime. and the client is asking me, and given my own miserable cooking skills and total lack of building skills, I'm thinking, hold on, how am I supposed to determine this? So that was the challenge. So I had to come up with some model that I could implement, and I had very little time to do so. So on the left is what I decided I should be doing. First of all, it became clear to me I have to use the agile approach. There's no time to tell the client, please decide what your requirements are and send me the requirements and we're going to discuss. We didn't have time for this. So what I did instead, I requested that we have an urgent meeting, we make a team, and we work together. Because on the one hand, the client is not very clear what online delivery is all about and no time to learn. I'm not very clear what the courses are all about, and also no time for me to understand what are the specific requirements, of delivering the, for example, modules from the building courses to tailor them to the online delivery. Then together, we create a process map. Then, based on this process map, we start developing the protocols one by one and speed testing the protocols. And once the protocols are speed tested, making them available. Now, this is something that as a person who comes from project management background, I'm feeling very uneasy about. Speed testing and then making them available. But in this situation, I felt like we have no choice. And of course, because we're doing things in such a fast manner, post-implementation testing and process reengineering is required. So in other words, my plan was, as the client insists that we need to have a full working system within a week, we'll get it work, and then after this, we'll solve the problems as they come. And on the right is the facing the music section. These are the problems that I encountered. And maybe if I would fully realize what the problems are going to be, I would plan things a bit differently. First of all, very hard to make the agile teams on a short notice. Because when you ask the client to refer some people to me to make a team, the client was not sure who were the best people within the organization to work with me. So it was very hard to even make the teams in the first place. Number two, I'm not a very technical person. So while my company provides the service, there are other people who are working on the technical side of the development. And I thought it's a good idea to get in somebody with some understanding of the industries. But on the short notice, I faced the same problem as the client. Posting on Facebook, guys, do you know anybody who is blah, 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 who's been working in the building industry? Asking on LinkedIn. It's not a very productive approach if you need some short-term results, but I couldn't think of anything else. And then, of course, at times it felt like making apple juice out of the oranges, because many of the courses were not designed for online delivery. The beauty of the courses that I've been teaching, that's IT and MBA courses, to some extent, they already have a strong online component prior to pandemics. Not that hard to translate them into online delivery. The staff members who teach MBA and MIT courses, they have very solid level of IT literacy. So it's much easier. In case of the TAFE courses, in many cases, students are not that technology friendly. Staff members, the teachers, those who provide admin support, then also not quite sure what the processes are. So that brings in additional challenges. So this is indeed a brave new world. And of course, many known unknowns and unknown unknowns. Problems keep coming up. Problems keep coming up, and we really have to accommodate for these problems. So this is what I learned. And I learned it the hard way. First of all, we really need to have expanded, I think, risk mitigation plans for such projects. We need to be prepared that any course is delivered face-to-face, but one day may be delivered online. And also, the world will not be the same, even if, and you know, I'm trying to be an optimist, that for some point in time, Victoria goes back to normal. There'll still be many students who continue studying online. So we'll have face-to-face class with students logging in from overseas simply because this is how they enroll, simply because they cannot return to the country. So secondly, prioritizing user-centered approaches, we've got to focus on the users and understand their needs and get feedback from the users throughout the process. It is absolutely essential. Number three, if possible, pre-release testing for all the protocols. Try to do as much testing as possible, because without sufficient testing, there'll be way too many challenges re-engineering the processes further down the track. And of course, e-learning developers like us, it's good to involve us from the very start. Maybe from the very start, we'll make sure that the way the courses are designed, they're e-learning friendly. And last but not least, of course, make sure that there is provision to have people delivering support throughout the project, technical support, learning management support, admin support, because without this support, no implementation can succeed. So this is more or less my story.
Michael, you clearly are a project manager and you're well to time, and I thank you very much for that. It's a great lesson. You've taught us about the agile approach. I'm enamored by the idea of working together. It's a very necessity thing. You've learned us there are pitfalls, but you've told us a little bit of a way from your experience of how to make this work. So that's very valuable. So we've got a couple of minutes for questions for Michael. If you could just unshare your screen there, Michael. And that's the little, that's it. And so we're now back into the view mode. So there's a couple of minutes for questions. Does anybody have a question for Michael?
I'm curious how they ended up working around the building and teaching building without actually hands-on hammering things.
Okay, Catherine, this is a very good question. Every course has some modules that can be delivered online. For example, some of the occupational health and safety modules, they're not supposed to be run at the building site anyway. They're supposed to be run in the classroom. So all the courses, not only building, even cookery, they have some modules that can be delivered online. So it is possible to deliver some of the content online, but there is a big problem. Some modules can be delivered online without compromising quality of the delivery, but some cannot, because there are some tasks that do need to happen on the building site. Otherwise, as you're pointing out correctly, they'll be putting the nails into their fingers. So my problem was, when I see the content framework, I have no clue what can be delivered online and what cannot be delivered online. So working together with the client, I need to get an idea from the client what can be done online without compromising quality of the delivery. Likewise, with cookery courses, can you assess somebody's cooking without actually tasting it? And as some of the teachers were pointing out, they feel much safer assessing students cooking online because they don't have to taste it. So, you know, from their perspective, you know, it's better approach to risk mitigation.
Thank you, Michael. We're going to leave it there with a very delicious thought there. Well, that's fantastic. I am going to invite one more question from the folks online there. And if you keep your answers short, we'll be moving on very well. Is there another question? All right, listen, fantastic. Michael, there are some questions in the chat. So I wonder, as Katrina prepares, if you would address some of those, that you'd be, again, extending your wonderful education to us, and I thank you very much for it.